now that we have a clear sense of who the enemy is, our next speaker spent 10 years as the lone socialist on the Seattle City Council, fighting tooth and nail for working people. Instead of getting elected, selling out working people, and building a nice career for herself, like many we've already seen, like AOC and those other progressive Democrats did, she went to war against the political establishment and built movements to win unparalleled working class victories. And we did that by bringing working class people into City Hall time and time again, making hearings in the evening so working class people could come, because we believe working people should be occupying public spaces. She is the only elected representative I know or have heard of in the history of this country who only took an average worker's wage and donated the rest of her salary to social and labor movements. And she's challenging Adam Smith, AIPAC's go-to bagman and one of the key architects of ICE. Please give a warm welcome to Kshama Sawant, the working class fighter we need in Congress.
In the 2 years since the genocide began, over 500,000 Palestinian people have lost their lives in Gaza, according to scientific estimates from the British medical journal, The Lancet. The ceasefire announcement and any pause in the killing, although we know it's not a real pause, or at least a full pause, but any pause in the killing is a desperately needed relief for the Palestinian people. Every life that can be saved must be saved, and every injury or loss of limb that can be prevented must be prevented. Credit goes to the Palestinian people themselves, not to Donald Trump or the Democrats and Republicans. It goes to the Palestinian people themselves and the international anti-war movement, including the Italian working class who carried out a general strike. But every time there was a ceasefire deal in the past years, Israel took Gaza back to what writer Muhammad Shahada has described as the slow, latent, invisible violence of starvation and engaging people in a permanent state of non-life. We demand a permanent ceasefire and end to the genocide. We demand a permanent end to all U.S. military funding to the Israeli state. We demand a permanent end to the apartheid and the occupation of Palestinian lands. Despite the ceasefire, the flow of US-sponsored weapons to Israel is continuing uninterrupted. Now is not the time to slow down or pause the anti-war movement. Now is the time to escalate. We need a global intifada, a mass uprising against this genocide and the violent capitalist system on a working class basis. Before we continue, take a moment to subscribe to On Strike if you haven't already done so. If you've been watching On Strike, you know that we bring coverage, political analysis, and strategy for the working class of the kind you simply won't find in the mainstream media. Become a member of Workers Strike Back to help ensure we can continue to build our movement against the billionaires and their political servants, and so that On Strike can continue to bring the kind of discussions about strategy needed to fight back and win. We don't run any ads, we don't accept any corporate money, and we rely on donations from working people like you. Go to workersstrikeback.org and click on Become a Member. We have to ask some sobering questions. 60% of Americans oppose Israel's genocide in Gaza, yet why has the supply of arms to Israel continued? A second sobering question. Nearly 60% of Americans support universal health care. The vast majority of Americans want rent control. Poll after poll shows that the majority of Americans support taxing the rich. 67% support a billionaire tax. Yet, why do America's working people have none of those things? A third sobering question. Trump is less popular than ever, yet the Democratic Party has the lowest approval ratings in 35 years. The Republican Party has only 38% approval, but the Democratic Party manages to have an even lower approval rating of 30%. Chuck Schumer, the most powerful Democratic politician in the nation, has an approval rating almost 20 points below Trump's. Why? The full, yes, that's the short answer. He sucks. The full story here is that most Americans are angry at both the Democratic and Republican parties, which brings me to my fourth sobering question. Over 60% of Americans want a new party, and they reject another billionaire-backed party, which, in other words, Americans are saying, we want a new working class party. Then why don't we have one? Despite both Democratic and Republican parties being deeply hated, over 90% of the politicians sit in Congress for decades. How do these politicians keep getting elected over and over, even though most people really just hate them? The answer to all of these questions lies. I didn't intend to be comedic, but the situation is so ludicrous. The answer to all these questions lies in the fact that for decades there has been no working class left alternative to the two parties of the billionaires. And in the absence of any independent working class party or even independent working class candidates who use their election campaigns and their elected offices to fight, these two parties keep carrying out their genocidal, anti-worker, bipartisan agenda. Democratic and Republican politicians in the US Congress have continuously bankrolled Israel to carry out the genocide, first under President Biden, who presided over the genocide for 15 months, and then under President Trump. My opponent, Adam Smith, is one of the Democrats who has voted to send tens of billions of dollars to Israel for the genocide. Smith also repeatedly voted to block United Nations food aid to Gaza, despite reports of catastrophic mass starvation. And as you've heard, he called anti-war protesters left-wing fascists and demanded their arrest. Adam Smith has the blood of 500,000 Palestinians on his hands. He needs to be on trial for war crimes. The bare minimum price Adam Smith needs to pay is to be thrown out of office. Adam Smith has been in office for 28 years. Throughout that time, he has consistently voted for billions of dollars for Israel's ethnic cleansing campaign. No wonder that Smith is a darling of AIPAC and the Zionist lobby. No wonder that AIPAC was his biggest funder last year. Smith has voted for the US invasion and occupation of Iraq and Afghanistan. He supported the wars in Kosovo, Libya, Syria, Yemen, and the current bloody inter-imperialist proxy war in Ukraine. He has the blood of literally millions of people on his hands. So no wonder that for nearly 3 decades, Smith has been bankrolled by weapons industry profiteers such as Lockheed Martin, Boeing, General Dynamics, Raytheon or RTX, Northrop Grumman, Palantir, General Atomics, and Chimera. Smith helped create the deportation machine that Trump is now using. Smith voted to create ICE, and then he voted again and again to fund ICE. Smith has already received the maximum donation for his campaign, for the election next year, from Alexander Karp. Do you know this guy? He's the CEO of Palantir. The Asian Times described Alexander Karp as the guy who is building the operating system for perpetual war. In 2008, Smith voted in favor of Bush's shameful bailout of big banks, while tens of millions of ordinary people were left to rot in the wake of the Great Recession. In 1997, Smith voted for a savage $150 billion slashing of Medicare and Medicaid funding. Adam Smith claims that he is fighting against Donald Trump. But as you can clearly see, that is exactly what he has not done. Adam Smith has been among those most responsible for the rightward lurch by the Democratic Party, paving the way for Trump to come to power. Putting our faith in the Democratic Party is exactly the wrong strategy if we want to defeat the right wing and the billionaire class. Yet, progressive Democrats like AOC and Bernie Sanders, and now Zohran Mamdani, are doing their best to keep the Democratic Party on life support. Both AOC and Sanders have been using their Fight Oligarchy tour to cynically tap into the frustrations of millions and channel them back to the Democratic Party for the 2026 midterm elections. Mamdani has said he is fighting for the soul of the Democratic Party. Are you fucking serious? This is an anti-worker party of the billionaires that has now also become a party of genocide. This party has no soul. Giving cover to this party is a betrayal of working people. And why has AOC abandoned working people and refused to fight for any of the demands she first campaigned on? Because doing so would put her in direct conflict with the Democratic Party leadership and the billionaire class. And it would cause, in her own words, relational harm with powerful Democrats and the billionaire class. In other words, it would be bad for her career. You can see that instinct with Mamdani also. He has not even been elected yet, but he's already bending to the pressures. I strongly support the working class demands he is running on. But New York City's working people will not be able to win those demands on the basis of Mamdani trying to woo the billionaire class and their political servants. All these elected officials from the Democratic Socialists of America, they want us to believe that bending to the pressure from and making peace with the Democratic Party and Wall Street is some sort of clever game of 4D chess. It is only clever from the point of view of putting your own career ahead of the interests of working people while selling them out. One of the crucial lessons from the 10 years of my Socialist City Council office is that working people's representatives must go on the offensive and use our office to build movements of working people around concrete demands. That is why I am using my election campaign, our election campaign, to build a militant movement for free healthcare for all, funded by taxing the rich. For national rent control and a massive expansion of publicly owned affordable housing. And for a $25 an hour federal minimum wage, which should at least be $30 an hour in major cities. It was through a militant fighting strategy that we won the nation's highest minimum wage in Seattle, which is going up to $21.30 an hour in January of next year. It was the first big city minimum wage victory, and it spread across the nation from here. Literally tens of millions of workers nationally have got a historic wage increase because of the movement we led here. Compare that to how AOC and Bernie Sanders abandoned the fight for 15 for fear of embarrassing Biden. The federal minimum wage is still a disgraceful $7.25 an hour. We won unprecedented renters' rights laws here, like the $10 cap on late rent fees, a ban on eviction during winter months, a 6 months notice for all rent increases, and a law that requires your landlord to give you 3 months worth of rent money if they force you to have to move because of a rent increase of 10% or more. And we won the Amazon tax, which raises hundreds of millions of dollars every year for affordable housing by taxing Amazon and other wealthiest businesses in Seattle. When we fight, we can win. But what is a fighting strategy? A fighting strategy means you as a leader need to become a threat to the political establishment if you want to win anything for working people. And you can only be a threat if you use your elected office to mobilize hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of working people. Most importantly of all, a fighting strategy means understanding who is on the side of the working class and who is not. A fighting strategy means understanding that the Democratic Party is not a friend of the working class, but actually our class enemy. If you try to get cozy with the Democrats, you will end up selling out working people. A fighting strategy also means understanding that the gatekeepers are not on the side of the working class. What do I mean by that? Who are these gatekeepers and what is their role? During the Amazon tax fight in 2020, it wasn't just Amazon's billionaires or the Democratic Party who opposed us. Do you know who else opposed us? Most of the labor leaders in the big unions opposed us. They tried to undermine the tax Amazon movement with behind-the-scenes maneuvers. Most of the leaders of the Black Lives Matter movement also opposed us. These BLM leaders, really misleaders, relentlessly attacked my office, claiming that the Amazon tax wasn't a quote-unquote black issue. And they went further, smearing me and other leaders in the tax Amazon movement as anti-black. These BLM misleaders made a deal with the Democratic Party that in exchange for money for their pet little NGOs, they would cut off any relations with our movement. In other words, these labor and NGO misleaders sold out the working class, including the black working class. There is nothing unique about this. It's what gatekeepers do. You will find them in every movement, in every community, in every state, in every country. Why do we call them gatekeepers? Because on the surface, they appear like they should be on our side. I mean, they're labor leaders, they're progressive NGO leaders. They say they support progressive things, but in reality, their role is to put the brakes on any fight back by working people. Their peaceful careers, their six-figure salaries, all of that depends on keeping good relations with the establishment, and they are part of that establishment. Being clear about the role of gatekeepers is a make or break for movements. Winning anything for the working class requires defeating the gatekeepers. And when movement leaders are not clear about this, movements reach a dead end. That is why the Black Lives Matter movement ended up winning so little, despite being the largest street protest movement in American history. Not understanding the role of gatekeepers is the single most important obstacle for movements today. You see, it's not usually the case that the billionaires come out and oppose you directly. It's not like Jeff Bezos met me directly and said, I oppose the Amazon tax. Obviously, he opposed it, and he's one of the most powerful people. And often, it's not even the Democratic Party leadership either that comes out in the open. It is the labor and NGO gatekeepers who are the most visible and yet the most invisible enemies of the working class. We won our victories because we refused to back down to gatekeepers. We built an overwhelming mobilization of our movement that threatened them, their political careers, and the political careers of the Democratic Party politicians if they voted against us. Some people will say, well, all these problems, doesn't it mean that working people shouldn't support any election campaign? We should just engage in protest movements instead? No. Drawing a dichotomy between building movements on the one hand and winning independent socialist elected office on the other is the wrong conclusion. Because you see, every single one of these pressures, every single one of these gatekeepers, they exist in every arena, whether it is elected office, a labor movement office, or leadership of movements like Black Lives Matter. Everywhere you go. It is because of their role as gatekeepers that most labor leaders have refused to call for strikes against the genocide and to end US military funding for Israel. It is because of their role as gatekeepers that most labor leaders keep supporting the Democratic Party even though they have thoroughly sold us out. In any arena, movements are crucial. In any arena, the correct kind of leadership is crucial. Some people ask, but what can you do with one congressional office? There are 100 senators and 435 representatives in the US Congress. One elected office cannot achieve anything. Well, here's the thing. What we were able to achieve in Seattle is not simply a game of numbers. If it was, then we would not have won a single victory with just one elected position, surrounded by enemies as we were. It was our ability to use our office to build powerful movements that won the unprecedented victories. As the pro-corporate Seattle Times was forced to acknowledge, with just one elected position, we commandeered the entire city's political agenda. And as Mother Jones magazine said, we dragged the Democratic Party politicians by their noses. Or, as Jamie Durkin, the brother of the infamous mayor Jenny Durkin, who was also the top corporate landlord lobbyist for the Seattle City Council for the time that I was on the body. As Jamie Durkin said openly, when I was in office, when we were in office, corporate landlords could not win. They could not win a single victory. Why? Because of what Jamie Durkin called Sawant's army. That is the power of movements with the correct kind of leadership. You can defeat billions of dollars. I have pledged that if I am elected, I will turn my congressional inauguration into a mass rally of 10,000 people in Washington, D.C., and immediately launch a nationwide fighting campaign to end all military aid to Israel and to win free healthcare for all funded by taxing the rich. These methods are not new. I didn't invent them. They are the methods of revolutionary socialism. They are the methods of the Teamsters, led by Marxists like ourselves, who led general strikes in 3 cities, including Minneapolis, that forced Democratic President FDR to pass the New Deal. Why? Because FDR and the capitalists he represented were afraid of an actual socialist revolution. These are the methods that won through the threat of revolution and new parties of working people, the public health care and social safety nets won by working people in Canada and Western Europe. These are the methods that won the Russian Revolution in 1917, the most progressive event in modern history. The crisis of the working class and of the planet will not be ended without ending capitalism. Palestinian oppression will not be ended without ending capitalism. We need to get rid of the system once and for all if there is going to be any future for humanity, or for that matter, the thousands of other species who are actively being extinguished by this system. That is why I'm a revolutionary socialist, and that is why this campaign for Congress is so crucial. There has never been a revolutionary socialist elected to the US Congress. I think it's time we turn politics completely upside down in Washington, D.C. What do you think? I think it's time we show the ruling class in Washington, D.C. what they've been missing. To make the capitalists fear for the stability of their rotten system and to win historic victories for the working class. Solidarity.
When we fight!